welcome to a very special Halloween edition of It's All Relative. I'm Josh.
And I'm Angela.
And today, we're talking all things paranormal. We'll be joined by lead investigator and founder of the Orange County, New York Paranormal Group. We'll hear a little about his background when dealing with the paranormal, talk about different locations that have been investigated, equipment that is used, and some firsthand encounters that have been experienced on site during investigations. So you guys already know what to do. Turn it up and let's get it rolling with an all-new episode right here on the It's All Relative podcast. Happy Halloween to everyone out there. We wanted to quickly state that it's a special day for all of us here at It's All Relative. Not only do we have a great Halloween special set up for you guys, but we also have reached our 60th episode. So a sincere thank you to all those who have supported us since day one, as well as those who are new to the show. Thank you all for the love and support. You know, we continue to do this for you guys, and It's All Relative wouldn't be where it's at today if it wasn't for all of you.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't have a show. I've been here, since the beginning of the year. I've had nothing but fun. It's been awesome, and I really, really appreciate everything. All the comments, the feedback, it all helps, and it makes us try to get a better show for you guys. So thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys. Like I mentioned before, we got a great Halloween show set up for you today. A subject that the world is so heavy into. Our listeners are always into. The people around this table are into.
Definitely.
So helping set the Halloween vibe, making his It's All Relative debut, ladies and gentlemen, Orange County, New York Paranormal lead investigator, Dan Pacella.
Welcome, Dan.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming and agreeing, yes, to come on It's All Relative. We greatly appreciate it. We're super excited.
Super excited.
Dan, as I mentioned before, people are so fascinated by the paranormal. And the experiences and stories, etc. Can you give us a little background on yourself and how you got involved with the whole paranormal concept?
Absolutely. It's interesting because there's so many people interested in this and do what they do, and when I talk to a lot of them, they have these like profound experiences that got them into it. I don't really have that. I've always been interested in it, but I can go back to the first experiences when I was a kid. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and where my housing development was all farmland for hundreds of years, as most of Western Pennsylvania was. It was either a steel mill or a farm. That was pretty much what your options were in the 1800s out there. But our town was heavily involved in the Underground Railroad, and I remember about 3 or 4 times over the course of maybe 12 years, so it wasn't like common, that I would see like a figure, like a translucent person running down the street, down the yards, because the houses didn't matter.
Right.
And I would see this, and it's funny, as a kid, I didn't think a whole lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and the discovery of the Underground Railroad house was after all of this. So I would see this and think, well, that's interesting. And then years later, you put 2 and 2 together. So that's probably the first interest I had in it. And, like most people, I watched all the TV shows and I read a lot of books. And also, my family has a connection to Hillview Manor, which is one of the most iconic haunted locations in Pennsylvania. My great-grandmother passed away there. I've had many relatives that passed away there. And we would go there every year for what we jokingly referred to as her annual last birthday party, because she lived to be 104.
Jeez, that's good.
And so my father and I would jokingly refer to it as that every year, because why are we making a big deal? She's going to live forever.
Right.
But we're sitting in Hillview Manor, and I turned to my aunt, and I said, "Who's playing piano?" And she said, "I don't know who's playing piano." Well, years later, I was watching Ghost Hunters, and they were there. And they said, "Oh yeah, that piano plays on its own."
So you witnessed it.
And I called my aunt. And I'm like, "You're not going to believe this," but so those are the 2 things that got me interested off the bat. My wife got interested in it through me. because she's the co-everything on this.
Right.
And just from there, just watching the shows like a lot of people and reading the books like a lot of people.
Now, how old were you when you had your first experience?
Man.
Around what age?
10,
10?
maybe?
Okay, so-
10-ish. Like 10 through 22 was kind of the age area that these things all kind of, the figures would happen. And then I was about 20, I think, when the piano thing happened.
It's pretty exciting, though, to be able to...
But neither one I realized at the time.
Right.
So you go back and you look and you're like, oh, I should have been more impressed by that.
All right. You are the founder and lead investigator for the group called Orange County, New York Paranormal. Can you talk to us about how that started and where it's grown to currently? Absolutely.
We're probably the first. I'm going to go out on a limb. We're one of the only groups that had ever started as an anniversary present. So
interesting.
Years of watching the shows, years of reading stories. You know how there's different anniversaries like paper, tin, gold. Well, apparently the 13th anniversary is the potentially demonic spirits of the criminally insane anniversary. Because my wife presents me with 2 tickets to go to an overnight thing at Rolling Hills Asylum in up near Rochester, Genesee, New York. And because she said to me, you're always talking about it, you look at everything, and you don't know whether you're going to run toward it or away from it until it happens. So let's see if you'll run toward it or away from it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And so we went up there, and something grunted in my ear in a hallway, and I ran after it, and the rest is history. But, it was just that experience, and there were like 40 people at this thing. This was back when we would just go to these events. Now we host a lot of this stuff, but back then we just started out by doing it that way. And, there were so many people, and it was interesting to me. I learned a lot from that first night that we use now. One thing I learned is people don't always understand what they're getting into. Mm-hmm. There were people there who thought it was like a corn maze, like a haunted maze and stuff, and they were like expecting jump scares. There were these sorority girls there that had no idea what they were doing. And it's funny because I must have looked like I knew what I was doing because they started following me around.
Nice.
And my wife was a little annoyed by that. It took me till I was in my mid-30s to figure out how to get sorority girls to follow me. But that was it. But, after that night, we were like, yeah, this is something we want to do. This is something we want to try. And, it evolved into this after we would go to events. And because I'm, my wife and I are both like, yeah, let's do this. And we always would rather, lead than follow. So we went out and we started purchasing equipment. And I have a problem because I'm addicted to the equipment. I'm addicted to building stuff and buying stuff. But rest was history.
That's awesome. That's a great anniversary gift.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One that never stops giving, right?
It's amazing now because we were so unprepared. Like, it was tickets and, 2 digital recorders. And she told me, a day ahead of time. So I had 0 time to do anything. And I remember carrying a backpack with the stuff in it and leaving it in different, rooms because I was so not knowing what to do.
Right.
That I was like, oh, I left my backpack over there again. And... we look upon it fondly.
The spirits are probably like, "Oh, look at this newbie."
Oh, they have to. I imagine all the spirits in a place like that because that's a factory.
At you.
They have people in there every day. They've got to be like, "Oh, these schmucks."
I'm like, "Hey, Larry, get a load of this one." Mm-hmm.
So, how many members are a part of the group that you have started?
It's funny. We don't have members.
Okay.
It's always Emily and I, but the biggest surprise in this journey has not been the spirits. It's been the living people we've met along the way. Nice. So we have people who investigate with us.
Okay.
And they have a very similar story as to how we've met them and how they've come to join us. Tim and Tracy Pacella own Grapevine Farms in Cobleskill, New York, one of the most haunted locations we ever go to. We went there, and we always invite owners and staff and anybody in the premises who wants to participate in the investigation to participate. We find that helps activity because we're strangers. Yeah. They know these folks.
They're familiar with it.
So, yeah. So first time Tim heard any kind of thing, he took his sweatshirt and put it up over his face. After that, though, they got so interested in it, they now investigate with us in different places. He and his wife.
So for Grapevine Farms, did they have experiences before you guys?
Oh yeah, I mean they discovered a tombstone in the basement 10 minutes after they bought that. 10 minutes after they bought at the property.
Wow.
Because back then, see, that was farmland, and David Hiltz is the tombstone. They still have it in the. They have David's room up there where the tombstone's kept in the store.
Dang.
But they would bury people on the property, but it's harvest time and we don't have time for sentimentality. So they would pull the tombstones up so they wouldn't hit them with the plows. So he found a few tombstones in that house. But Tim and Tracy started off by being like, oh, okay, this is interesting, owning a haunted location. And now they go around with us to other haunted locations and have actually become really good paranormal investigators. And our other two folks, we almost have like an East New York and a West New York chapter. It's very strange.
Cool.
But Rhea Hayes and Margot Kotok, we met them because Rhea was the general director of the Museum of Wayne County History, one of another really haunted location. We met with them, we worked with them, we did some events for them, and they've become really good friends, and they too investigate with us. So we don't really. I get a lot of emails of people like, "Do you have members? Are you recruit?" We don't really do that.
We just sort of
grown organically, and plus, it's also been a family affair. My father-in-law has come along, my mother has come along.
That's awesome.
So we just get everybody. Our daughter's getting into it.
And how old is she?
She's
Younger?
14. She doesn't do the investigations, but she does. She helps out at the events. And it's funny. Last night, it's like she's 14 years old and she's going up to this attic that she knows is haunted to guide people through and show them what happens. And
Brave.
I'm like, yep, she's not worried.
See, I am a runner. I ran. I didn't the fight or flight. I flight.
Judgment-free zone. Everybody reacts how they react. And look, every investigator at some point has stepped outside. Don't let the TV shows fool you. We've all had the moment where we're like, and when we do events, we always say it's okay to be scared. This is judgment-free. Just let us know that you're stepping outside because we don't want to lose you.
Right.
Yeah, I'd rather be with the group than.
But our group, it's been Emily and I. That's the consistent thing. But the people involved have gone from location to. We had
awesome.
We had half the Sharon Springs Historical Society investigating with us at a house they invited us up to a couple weeks ago. So.
Nice.
How many investigations have you guys gone on?
Well, I would say probably 75 to 100.
Oh,
and that's counting in residential, which we don't publish from. Businesses, historical, we publish everything except residential stuff, which is private. So I would say it's up there. I've lost count.
Yeah, actually, that was a pretty big number. I was expecting a smaller number than that. Can you walk us through kind of like the prep and what goes on the day or night of an investigation?
Sure. The prep starts months ahead of time.
Okay.
My wife has the most thankless job of anyone involved with this. She tries to get locations. We don't do cemeteries. I think it's rude to go.
Probably disrespectful.
Like I'm a paranormal investigator. I'm not a ghost hunter. There's a difference. And I think investigating cemeteries is rude. I think it's like ringing the doorbell and running away. I don't think cemeteries are inherently haunted. We don't do abandoned buildings because A, that's unsafe, and B, that's illegal. It's called trespassing. Somebody told me, I went in this building. No, don't worry, nobody owns it. And I'm like, somebody owns everything.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But the thankless job that she has of getting locations. So she's working on 24 right now.
Wow.
So it starts months. But once we get the location, it's not like the TV shows. We can't pay a location to close for 4 days.
Right.
And you see these episodes that are 42 minutes long. These shows spend a week there. I get a day if I'm lucky. So normally we're driving up the day of. And my wife has done the research. We've talked. If we can talk to them before we get there, we do. Most of the time we don't get to. We look for other paranormal evidence that's been published from the location, which is very hard to find. Not enough groups publish. But when we get there, it's just, okay, tell us the stories. Let's talk to everybody here. Where are the hot spots? What have folks seen? What are the consistent stories?
Yes.
What is history? What is legend? What is documented? What is not? and Emily's doing most of that. I'm just worried about where I'm putting my cameras. Some locations don't tell us anything because they don't want to tell us anything, and then they want to see what we find without being prepped. And that's fine too. But we go in with, we use stationary cameras, handheld cameras. So I like to set up 5 or 6 cameras around the building where we're not even going to be most of the time to do that. So I always try to find the hot spot. So I'm doing all of the gear. I'm setting everything up for that while Emily does a lot of the interviews. And then, honestly, we see if anybody who works there wants to participate, because it's their place. It's not mine.
Right.
Dealing with the dead isn't that much different than dealing with the living. If you have a stranger in front of you, you're not as likely to talk to them if they're not standing next to somebody you already know.
Yes, I feel like that makes total sense. And it's very smart. You would think.
You'd think, and not enough folks do it, in my opinion. I'm shocked when we go to a location we weren't allowed to participate when the last group came through. And I'm like, isn't it your building?
Yeah.
And a lot of folks don't realize that the owners of the building own every second of footage that you take inside their building. I actually have had to educate a lot of owners on that legality. But, so we go in, we prep, we introduce ourselves. And if it's a place that's never been investigated, we call it going fishing, where we take out an EMF detector or a Mel meter and we just try to find where the electromagnetic energy is, or cold spots or anything that can clue us in. If it's a place that has a lot of history, and we can go back and look, it definitely focuses it. I prefer the first one. I like fishing. I like going to the places that haven't had a lot.
Yeah.
Then we investigate, then we tear it down, and most of the time we drive home.
Most of
Do
the
it all
time?
in a day.
Well, we stay in hotels sometimes.
Okay. Well, the rest. That's cool, though.
We've gotten a lot smoother. It used to take me a lot longer. We are now with the gear. I am now a well-oiled machine. It used to take an hour and a half to set up 2 cameras. I can set up the entire investigation now in about a half hour.
Nice.
Because I've fine-tuned it.
What is the furthest you would drive for?
The furthest we have gone, we've gone out about 6 hours. We went to, we did Hillview Manor because of the connection I had to it once. But we also go up to Rochester. We've been in Wayne County, New York, 4 times this year. Because we were brought in and we investigated 3 different buildings in Wayne County, which is cool. RIA was big in getting us into a lot of that. And we're actually doing an event up there for charity this coming weekend.
Nice.
But yeah, I was a sales rep, a road rep for years, so 6 hours of driving means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Walk in the park.
Doesn't faze me.
Do you have a favorite location that you've investigated, and if so, why?
They all have their thing that makes me like them. I have several and it's for different reasons. For example, I taught, since I mentioned it already, Grapevine Farms, for example, is one of my all-time favorites. Not only because of how awesome Tim and Tracy are as the owners and how great their staff is, their spirits are really unique because it's the only place we go where the spirits seem to be aware of each other and they talk about each other. They didn't all pass away at the same time. And usually when you deal with spirits of different eras, they can haunt the same location, but they don't appear to exist in the same realm. This place, they talk about each other. And it's really unique. So that makes that a very fascinating location. You have a place we do a lot of volunteer work with Hyde Hall up in Glimmerglass State Park. And that was the largest home in America pre-Civil War. And they are European, aristocratic. So when you go in there, not only is the house everything in that house is worth more than I am, so I'm scared to death walking around there in the dark. That's a flashlights on investigation. But you have to be different when you're there. You have to call them Mr. and Mrs. Clark, and you have to be. Their servants spoke French. They didn't speak English, so we actually speak French when we do that, and we've actually gotten French back.
Wow!
But that's a unique location because of how you have to make yourself a different kind of investigator to do that. Up in Wayne County, the Museum of Wayne County History. It's a prison, a museum, and a carriage house in one place.
My God.
So you've got basically 3, you almost have to go, usually have to go 3 different locations to get that. That made that unique. And of course, anytime we investigate a theater, for some reason I love investigating theaters. I have no idea why. I just love love Investigator. So
Seems really cool,
I don't
though.
have one favorite, but I have favorites for different reasons.
Okay.
Didn't a spirit at Grapevine Farms laugh at you or something?
Oh, they always laugh at us. They called me Baldy one time. The spirits at Grapevine are very intelligent, to the point that we know which ones like us and which ones don't. But they laugh like something funny happened. For some reason, I was holding up my phone to take a picture, and an app just kind of opened on Instagram, and it was somebody started talking, and it was like two people fighting. It was like, "You get away from my man!" And I stopped it, and then all of a sudden, the one of the pieces of equipment that we used that gives answers in real time says, "That's funny."
Wow.
But they're good with the equipment because we've just been up there so much. They've learned how to use it. Their response time is really fast.
Well, I was going to ask a little about that. I mean, so you have captured or recorded EVPs.
Oh yeah.
Can you kind of explain and kind of talk to some of our listeners who may not be too familiar with what that is, and you know what I'm saying, and also maybe touch on how often do you get these EVP recordings, or is it more of a rare?
Well, you can be tricked into thinking it happens all the time through edited stuff. Like
Okay.
when I put out an investigation video, it's about 20 minutes long. It's
Okay.
55 hours of video footage a lot of the time. So they happen. Now, in some places, they happen more than others. Some locations are very good with some pieces of equipment, some are not.
Okay.
Now, EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon, or phenomena. There's two different ways. I mix them up too. They kind of mean the same thing.
Right.
Basically, what it means is, to talk in crayon about it, simply put, it is a voice that the equipment can pick up with the microphones that the human ear cannot.
Okay.
There are two different investigations that happen. The one we experience, the one the equipment experiences. And the one the equipment experiences is always more interesting. But, so the EVPs are usually separated into three classes. And I'll do this off the top of my head. Somebody out there is going to comment, Dan's wrong about that. This is a Class C, but I'll give the best way I can do it. Class C is basically a whisper or some kind of voice that you cannot tell what it is. You can't tell what it's saying. It's there. It's a voice. It's something that isn't natural. But you can't really discern what it's saying, what it's responding to. A Class B is something that's a whisper, very quiet, very faint. You can make out what it is. But it's, you almost need the kind of headphones we're wearing here, the noise canceling stuff, to hear it. A Class A is clear as day. A Class A can have inflection. A Class A can be annoyed. You can tell if it's a male, a female, or a child. And we tend to get B 80% of the time.
Okay.
But when you get the best ones, oh my goodness. We have caught some ones that are just amazing in terms of the inflection. At Hyde Hall, I tripped over something. And we capture this woman's voice in a camera in a hallway going, "Hold on, I say." And she's so annoyed with me. And you can hear it in her voice. She's like, who's this schmuck tripping over our stuff? And, and we get the children. The Grapevine Farm's in the basement. There's a little boy down there. The only thing we know about him is his name is Michael, and he's 8 because he tells us every single time. And he likes the closet.
Really?
He did, for some reason. And I was like, "You playing hide and seek?" And we get a kid's voice clear as day. It says, "Look in the closet." And kids' voices are always creepy. They could be singing "Happy Birthday," doesn't matter. Kids' voices always are creepy. But
Kids are creepy.
I was going to mention that. That makes the hair on my neck stand up.
the EVPs, the Class A's, are amazing. But most of them are of that B variety where it's a whisper, and we can tell what it's saying. But we can't tell if it's male or female. We can't tell what emotion's behind it. And keep in mind, a whisper that we pick up could be a spirit screaming. It's the amount of energy it takes for them to create those sounds is, in theory, immense.
Wackadoodle.
It's when the disembodied voices happen that's when it really gets good.
I wanted to know if there's ever been a place that you refused to visit or that you wouldn't visit, and why?
There are. And the reason we won't go some places is we won't go somewhere we're not qualified to go. We don't open doors we don't know how to close.
Gotcha.
People watch the shows, and they think that you're an expert on everything. You know what you need? You know what training you need to be a paranormal investigator? You need a digital recorder, if even. That you need way more training to be a demonologist, an exorcist, a medium, because everybody has that gift. It's just a matter of how you use it, the strength of it, and how you channel it. So people, you know, in my opinion, they turn on paranormal television and they go, "Oh, Zach Bagans knows how to do everything, so every paranormal group must know how to do everything." And we get emails like, "Hey, something happened in my house and I need to get rid of it." I'm not qualified to do that.
Right.
In this field, if you go looking for trouble, you will find it. We do not go looking for trouble because we're not qualified to deal with it. Now, thankfully, over the years, we've gotten a network of people. We know who to refer people to on certain issues because we do want to help. But yeah, we stay away from the demonic stuff because we're not qualified for it. And we tend to stay away from things that are just going to cause trouble. Our specialty is communication and assisting with the living people around the spirits to understand what they're dealing with and to be able to coexist.
Well, during any of these investigations, have you ever come across a spirit or a voice that was not? You could definitely tell maybe was a little angry.
Oh yeah, it happens, especially, and it's very environmental. We've done prisons, and that's where. Right. I mean, my wife was pushed down the stairs at the Burlington County Prison by an unseen force.
Whoa.
And yeah, two black eyes for 3 weeks, and she hit the railing so hard I had to peel the paint off her teeth.
Oh my God.
And it was, and that obviously you're in a prison, so. And that's the most extreme example.
Okay.
And that was a long time ago, so she's definitely it didn't affect her in terms of which we've done many investigations since. But I mean, you'll run into a spirit that you get that fight or flight feeling sometimes. There was a room at the Worcester Inn that didn't want me in there, and that you run into it in prison cells, and you run into it in some places you don't expect to. But most spirits. The angry ones are sometimes more curmudgeon. They just want to be left alone, much like most people do. But again, it all comes, you have to set the table with them correctly. And I think we don't run into a ton of trouble in most locations because we set the table. Every time we go to a place, we introduce ourselves. And I tell them, look, I come with respect for you, for the lives you led, the lives you lead, who you were, who you are. And we will treat you with respect. We expect to be treated with respect in turn. And generally, that has worked well for us. But we also don't seek out trouble. Mm-hmm. We know what our expertise is. We know what our limits are. And too many people don't. And then they get into trouble.
Well, I was going to kind of mention that or kind of maybe bring that up. Maybe the novice investigator, the best way to be able to maybe catch something on camera or what have you is to provoke whatever's there, and maybe that's not the best idea.
I would not suggest that.
Well, we go to events and people tell me the things that they've done, and I'm like, you're gonna really get something you don't know how to deal with. And if, again, like I said, you go looking for trouble, you will find it.
All right. Well, that kind of answers my other question about the belief on opening the possibility of like opening yourself up to possession or being a vessel of sorts to these spirits. Like what you do, like do you like?
We there are certain things. We have black tourmaline and stuff like that is supposed to be known to repel it. It's interesting. People ask me, well, I wear a cross and all that stuff. That's great, but what if the spirit's not Christian?
That's a very good point.
I think a lot of it comes down to it's all about personal. Like I've done a lot of stuff over the years with the I'm going to get the name of the place wrong, but it's the Institute of Spirit. Oh my goodness, I'm going to screw that up. It's up in Oneonta. It's a great group, and what they do is they teach you how to use your inner abilities. And it's not it's psychic, but that kind of strength. And
it's energy.
The thing is, what I've come to learn from dealing with and talking with them is that it's not the belief in the wristband or the cross. It's the strength that you derive from your belief that that will protect you. So it's all about where you stand. If you, I always tell people, should I wear a cross? If you feel that protects you, absolutely do it. Mm-hmm. Wear whatever makes you feel strong. Do.
Yeah.
And, you know, and look, it happens sometimes. We've all been out of sorts. You know, we did an investigation at the Wayside Irish Pub. This little girl I don't know how old she was actually, but she apparently had hung herself in one of the upper bedrooms, and she started coming through the spirit box to me. And I'm convinced she followed me around the rest of the night because I was getting tugged and my ear was getting pulled, and I was a little out of sorts because that, you know, no matter how long you've been doing this, that is a little odd. But again, and then when we leave, we tell them, you stay here. You're not welcome to come with us. You know, you stay where you are, we'll stay where we are, and we have never brought anything home with us.
That's good.
I mean, again, you know, it's something else. Paranormal TV makes you think that, you know, Satan's in everybody's basement and that spirits always come home with you.
No, some spirits are tied to their location and stuff.
Yeah, but, you know, if you don't want something to follow you home, tell it not to follow you home. And believe it or not, that actually works.
I'm not, I do that personally because I had a house that I used to clean, and I would always say, you stay here, you're not welcome, and not welcomed. And like I always say something on my way out. People think you can't talk to them or you can't stand your ground. I'm not saying, you know, provoke. We don't ever provoke. Grapevine Farms has a wine cellar. One of the girls down there was like, yeah, they keep knocking the lids off the wine thing and it's bothering me. I'm like, did you try telling them to stop? Ask them nicely.
And she's like, no. And then when I came up a couple weeks later, she's like, you know, Dan, that actually worked.
One more question. The idea of Halloween, I know you say you have a lot of investigations around this time, not so much the rest of the year, but like, what are your beliefs on the veil opening and thinning around Halloween?
Being that everything we do is technology based, and I'm not a spiritualist, I'm not a medium. For a group that focuses on what we do, it's all about energy. It's all about electromagnetic energy. There was a full moon on Saturday night. We had an event on Saturday, and it was a full moon, and everybody's like, oh my goodness, what's that mean? I said, well, all it really means is there's more electromagnetic energy in the air. When it comes to, you know, Halloween, and most of that dates back to ancient religion and stuff like that. And again, I honestly think that, you know, if you believe something enough, you can almost will it into existence.
Manifestation.
So I do believe that, you know, the pagans were onto something. So it's probably not an accident, but I'm not educated enough on it to give you an intelligent response as to when the veil opens and closes and when things align and when they don't. But I will tell you that there's something about October that really, it makes everybody interested in this. Like tomorrow, after, nobody's going to want to talk to us again for a year,
right?
Because once tomorrow comes and it's November 1st, they'll just put us in the drawer, and then middle of next September I'll get interview requests again. But I think there's something to it, but I couldn't tell you what it is because we go from my camera doesn't tell me whether or not there's more energy, whether or not there's something spiritual about it more than any other time. But it is a good time of year for it, though. Fall's beautiful.
Yeah. Spooky.
Yeah.
Spooky time.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue to hear from Dan as we talk more about paranormal spirits, equipment that's used during investigations, and some personal experiences that have involved the paranormal. So make sure you come back with us right here on the It's All Relative podcast.
I'm in the game now, shit's the same now. Explode next mode, I'm the same how. Don't say you know me, just say you did. When you see me sliding off to another crib, boom, in the game now, I'm the same how. The rap game will never be the same now. Don't say you know me, just say you did. And when you hear why yo, say that's that shit.
Welcome back to It's All Relative. Still with us in studio, Dan Pacella. So Dan, I know that we touched earlier a little on some of the equipment that you guys use during investigations, but I want to elaborate a little more on maybe some of the correct terms and some of
they
their
do.
purposes, yeah, because I'm sure a lot of our listeners are just think when you think of investigating the paranormal, maybe like you said, just a camera, but
Well, you can. You can use a camera. I mean, paranormal happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the reason we investigate at night, actually, it's not because it's spookier. The reason we investigate at night is because the world is more cooperative. The sun is a terrible enemy of a paranormal investigation because you're looking for shadows. You're looking for things that shouldn't be there. The sun illuminates the world outside. The world is a quieter place at night. There aren't as many cars driving by if you're in an urban area, or it's just quieter in general. If you're a business, the business is closed.
right.
You don't have as much going on. But we use a lot of different types of equipment because that's all we have. We don't have that psychic or that medium person who can help us with that, which I actually prefer because I think it for more people, I think they can wrap their brain around something they can actually hear. As opposed to, and there are legitimate people out there who are, I've met some that are absolutely insane when it comes to how good they are at this. But for us, we use, obviously for the visual, I'll start with visual. We use two different types of cameras. One of them is called a full spectrum camera, and it's designed to see ultraviolet light and infrared light. Those spectrums are just above and just below what the human eye can see. Because much like audio is on a different plane. Visually, a lot of the light anomalies we capture can't be seen by the human eye.
Right.
So it started off with just infrared. So if you have a camcorder at home, or even some phones do this now. Somebody showed me a phone the other day that has IR. IR infrared is the black and white. If you're looking at full spectrum, it tends to be either a purplish or a pinkish hue. That's the difference. If you're looking at a video on YouTube or you're looking on television, that's how you can tell the difference. My stationary cameras are full spectrum. The handheld ones are IR, just because that's what they are. That's just how I've divided it. There's no rule that says you can't use one or the other a different way. From a cost perspective, I probably should have just gone with IR. But the full spectrum ones, we've caught a lot of interesting anomalies and stuff that we would not have captured in IR, because it's just different. You catch stuff on one type that you wouldn't catch on another. We use full spectrum digital cameras where we take bursts of photos. And I always tell folks when they're investigating or doing an event that you have to take it in bursts. You have to take 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because paranormal moves.
Right.
And whether you're using a full spectrum digital or using just your iPhone camera, I've seen some amazing paranormal pictures taken with just a regular camera in the dark. And we always tell folks at events, that camera is the best thing you got on you. So we'll do that. We'll use thermal imaging cameras, which it's funny. These are the same things like plumbers and mechanics will use to see where there's breaks in pipes. It's the same thing. And because paranormal activity tends to be a different temperature, usually it's colder. So a cold spot, it can actually physically see a cold spot. It also depresses us sometimes because one time we were in a place and my wife's like, it's warm in here because you're never comfortable. Whipped on the thermal, it was 97 degrees.
It's
and
hot.
she turned to me and said, yeah, we're not staying here very long. I said, nah, we'll be here a couple hours. She's like, do you want to leave alone or with me? But we use structured light sensor cameras. Structured light sensor camera, SLS, if anybody listening watches the TV shows, it's the stick figure camera. It uses Microsoft Kinect technology, the same technology that video game systems use to let your body control the game. And the way that we use it's the same exact thing you would hook up to a Microsoft Kinect back in the day. It's the exact thing. It says Xbox on it. It's the exact piece of technology. And the idea is that if it senses something with enough substance in front of it, it thinks there's a person there. So it will draw on the screen a stick figure of the shape of what it's seeing. And a lot of times that stick figure isn't actually somebody who's there. So that can be something that we use. In terms of a little bit of less technology, we've used Polaroid cameras because sometimes, and we haven't caught anything with it, but I have seen paranormal evidence captured through a Polaroid camera.
Like the old school.
Like the old school.
See, when I was a kid, we had a Polaroid, and we had a picture. It was unexplainable, but
No, and you'll get those. And the problem with Polaroids, it's harder to do burst photos with those because you have to hit the button, have it print out, hit the button again. So you have to be like a statue, and it never completely works. We've never caught anything on one, but it's just because you don't catch anything on it doesn't mean you don't try it.
Right.
Those are the cameras, and there's a lot of them. I mean, we have in our arsenal, I've got about a dozen full spectrum, 2 or 3 handhelds, a couple thermal, 1 SLS because that thing's a pain to put together. But then that's just for the video. And by the way, these video things also all capture audio too. So we have to we have to listen while we watch these things for the audio. But then there's also the audio side where you have the digital recorder or the phone app voice recorder on your phone can be used like this. We have the Spirit Box, which is the one that goes that one. If you ever watch the shows, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It scans radio stations at one station every 1/10 of a second. And the concept of that is it creates enough white noise to allow the spirit to speak
to come through
that white noise. It is the most annoying piece of equipment because of that sound. But man, we keep getting good stuff on it. And it's funny, a couple of folks we work with have always hated it, but they're starting to come around. My favorite Spirit Box piece ever was in the Wayside Irish Pub in Elbridge, New York. I'm walking around with it. And through the sound, it goes, "I see you," which was a little creepy when you're sitting in my office looking at it later, like because we don't in real time you can't tell. So I just go something there, So I'm tagging it. Most of the investigation I spend talking to myself through the camera to remind myself when I'm looking at it 3 weeks down the road of what I want to look for.
Yeah.
Just like you mark something on a podcast when you're recording, I mark stuff during an investigation. Another form of audio equipment we use is called the Phasma Box. This one's a little more obscure, but what it does is it's another real-time audio equipment. You can hear it as it's saying stuff. This one uses chopped up sound bars, and it allows, in theory, spirits to use those and manipulate those chopped up sound bars to form words. And there's a lot of reverberation. There's a lot of weird sounds that come out of that when the spirits are kind of manipulating the energy. The Phasma Box, anytime a new piece of equipment gets introduced, I'm always instantly skeptical of it. The way it can prove itself to me is if it and another piece of equipment pick up the same thing in about the same time. And the first time this happened was in the Burlington County Prison, where I'm in a prison cell, and the Phasma Box says in a weird reverberant voice, "I want you." And then we capture an EVP, "I want you." Just what you want to hear in a prison cell. But I now have about 3 dozen instances where this has happened. And so that's a very valid piece of equipment. Another piece of equipment doesn't fall under either category is the Ovulus device. If you've watched the shows, you probably have seen this. It is a phonetic generator. And what it does is it's a little box, and it throws out, in theory, this is all in theory what these things do. In theory, it throws out a dictionary of about 500 words into the electromagnetic spectrum and allows spirits to select the words to come up on the screen. And if any novice investigators out there, don't get that one immediately. That's probably the most expensive piece of equipment we have. But it has proven itself in the same way. Where the Ovulus will have a voice come up, and I'll capture an EVP on a camera nearby saying the same thing. So that's how these things validate themselves. Beyond that, I mean, we use K2 meters, which are electromagnetic detectors. The things with the lights on them that you'll use around your house, maybe if you're looking to see where the wiring is. We use Mel meters, which are very common. They tell temperature. They tell milligauss more specifically. My favorite thing to carry around is called the EDI, which kind of just does all of it.
Oh, nice.
And it does vibrations too, so it's nice to put that somewhere if you think something's moving around. Every one of these things is a little more fine-tuned. The K2 is more general, the Mel meter is more refined, and then the EDI is probably the most refined of those pieces of equipment. I use cat toys.
Really?
You ever seen the light-up balls for cat toys where they can play with them and they light up? We use those to sense vibration.
That's a good idea, actually.
We use sensors that people would use for home security to see if something if it goes off, if it senses something moving. It's funny what can be a piece of paranormal equipment. And I'm sure I'm actually, despite how much I've droned on about this for 5 minutes, I've probably missed something that's in our arsenal too, because there's that much paranormal equipment. We have found some of it to be useful. We have found some of it to be not useful at all. And probably the not useful stuff is probably the stuff I forgot to mention because I forgot we even have it.
So, like, when you're like all these equipments, do they get set up separately and just run as is, or do you have to like hand use, like you have to have them in your hand and use
some of them you just leave, but most of the stuff is, you know, you walk around with it, like the EMF stuff, the K2s and stuff like that. If there's a light or an indicator, you can leave it somewhere. We just leave it where the camera can see it. That way, if it goes off, we know that something's going on there. The trick with the electromagnetic stuff is you got to be careful because it is really easy in today's world to get false positives on that stuff. Cell phones will affect the lower end EMF. Like, doesn't affect the MEL, doesn't affect the EDI, but the K2 ones with the lights on, with the lights, that can really affect it. We try to tell folks at events we do that it'll do that, but you know, mixed results. They'll walk around with their phone underneath it going, wow, we're getting a big reading. And my wife's going, Dan, let them enjoy themselves. Because I'm Captain Bring Down at event. I try to debunk everything. And my wife's like, Dan, just let them enjoy themselves. It's okay. You can explain it at the end.
That's funny.
Do you have a favorite piece of equipment that you use when you investigate?
I really like the thermal camera.
Okay.
Even though we never have gotten a ton on it, I just know that when we do, it's going to be great. I've caught one thermal thing we got was we've got the thermal outline of a little girl in the attic of Grapevine Farms, and but beyond that, and that's impressive. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's I'm always using that thing. And we just got the SLS, the structured light sensor camera that you can move around. I built one that was stationary, but I wanted one that actually had an external power source.
Nice.
We just had an incredible experience with that that I haven't reviewed yet, so I don't want to talk about it because I haven't tried to debunk it yet. But if it is what I think it is, it's incredible.
That's awesome.
And I like the EDI. Just because it's so versatile. You can set it to be temperature, you can set it to be electromagnetic, you can set it for vibration. You don't need, I keep that in my pocket and it's 6 different things.
That's nice.
When you have as much equipment on you as I usually do in my vest, it's nice to be able to consolidate. My wife's favorite by far and away has to be the Phasma box. Because it's such an instant. I know most of our team loves that thing.
That's the one that's like real time.
That's real time, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be so exciting to see like footage, or you know, when you
Like,
are capturing this stuff
there.
and you're able to see this stuff.
You don't see it in real time though. And
Oh yeah, that's right. Afterwards.
and you know, everybody wants to be a paranormal investigator and set up cameras until you have to watch it all. But it is exciting when you're watching it and you've stared at nothing for 3 hours and all of a sudden something happens. And that's why you have to do it, because you have to be able. Some of the best stuff we've captured has been on cameras we're not even around.
Well, then, when you guys do these investigations and lead investigations, what's one major, what's one misconception that like people expect? Or I mean, are usually when people go on these things, they're expecting to see something or hoping to see something.
We lay it out. I lay it out early. We do guidelines, and the first thing is nothing happening is normal.
Okay.
And I think when folks get into this, that's the hardest part. At the Seneca Falls Historical Society, during our last investigation there, they have checkerboards built into the staircase in the Becker Mansion because the kids, if they were good, could play checkers going up to bed. I sat there with that checkerboard for 3.5 hours to try and elicit activity and didn't get any. But I sat there for 3.5 hours trying to get that activity to happen.
It's patience.
That was my entire thing. And I think, you know, when we do events, they're 2 hours or 3 hours, and, you know, we'll sit in one spot that long. So the misconception, I think, is that things are always happening. You know, when these shows go to film, I remember hearing there was the the Ghost Hunters episode from the Stanley Hotel, out in the one that The Shining is based off of. It was a great episode at the time. It took them 2 weeks to get that. They had to stay for 2 weeks.
Is that the one across the river?
That's the one. No, that's the Shanley.
The Shanley.
In Ellenville.
Okay.
The Stanley Hotel is in Colorado. It's actually what Stephen King based The Shining off of.
Okay.
But that's really one of the most haunted places in America. They had to stay for 2 weeks to get something, because it doesn't adhere to a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Luckily, we've never had an investigation where we got absolutely nothing, but we've come close.
Well, that's exciting then. That's good news.
Yeah, that's like
I'm waiting for that one
good
because
odds.
it's going to happen.
Right.
But we also go places that have the places we've gotten absolutely nothing are mostly residential. I'm talking about historical places or businesses that have some kind of history.
Activities.
Yeah. For most residentials we find nothing.
Okay.
So, like, people, 9 times out of 10, do people ask you to come into their houses, or do you ever, like, seek them out?
We don't seek out residential. If somebody wants to reach out, they can. 9 times out of 10, they'll reach out to us. We'll ask a bunch of questions, and then they just kind of go away.
Fizzles.
I think what happens is everybody kind of wants to do it till they get the opportunity to. And we tell people when we go into these places, look, you may not want to know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to know once they know that they can find out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I don't really want to know after all.
Yeah, and I don't publish residential stuff. I mean,
Right.
there's one that,
It's
because she
personal.
didn't even live in the house at the time. She bought it from Florida. It was a Sharon Springs farmhouse that turned out to be really haunted. And, but yeah, the residential ones are interesting. And a lot of times when they contact us, they're contacting us with a problem we're not qualified to solve. So we defer them to some folks that we know that can solve it. Because if they're reaching out to us, sometimes it's, hey, I think something's going on in my house and I'm curious what it is. That's fine. But something's in my house and I need to get rid of it. Or we were playing with a Ouija board. Now the house is weird. I'm not qualified to do any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, call somebody else.
That's right. Who are you going to call? Someone else.
Ghostbusters?
We're not afraid of it. We're just not qualified to deal with it.
Right. Well, I mean, Dan, you've mentioned a few times about some personal experiences when dealing with the paranormal, and I know, Angela, you also have experienced some. I want to talk with each of you and have you guys share, I mean, as many as you want, one that comes to mind or whatever, but when talking about your experiences, I want to know basically, was it a good or bad result? And how was the presence made, But I mean, whoever would like to go first, I would.
Ladies first.
I will just clarify and say the reason why I don't really have anything to say is unfortunately, like, I am a believer in the paranormal. I'm a big believer in a lot of things that people may call or say is crazy, but I also have not really yet ever personally experienced anything, unfortunately. And I'm open to it and I want to, damn it. But like, it just hasn't happened. So I haven't been able to. So I'm very interested in hearing about both of yours. So.
Well, I mean, I've had a few. I'll start with the simpler ones. When I was in high school, I had a car doubly named the Griswold Mobile because it was like a Chrysler Town Barn station wagon, looked just like the Griswold Mobile. And I would always see in the passenger seat when I was alone somebody sitting there, but when I would turn, it would always be gone. It gave me a good feeling. I felt like that was like a guardian angel or somebody watching over me. I did a lot of stupid shit back then, trust me. Could have been a lot worse. So, like, that's how that was that. Another time was my ex-parents or father lived on a farm right here in Dutchess County. Also used as the Underground Railroad. He knew about that. And I had kept animals there. And so one night I was there, and I never went after dark. It was just something I stayed away from. But I went there, and it was like dusk, and I was doing something, and there was just a hand, and it was put right on my back. I know what I felt. I ran. the fight or flight, I ran. I just dropped everything and I left and then come back to the next day.
There's no shame in that.
But I could, I know what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody just placed their hand right on my back. It was weird. So that was that. But my most notorious one was on my wedding night, the night before my wedding. And I spent the night at my friend's house who had this house in Stanfordville, New York. She and her husband had always told me stories about it, but as a skeptic and a believer, but, I believed her, but it didn't sit, firmly until this night. So we had stayed up late, hung out. I went to bed. I was sleeping with her in her bed upstairs. Now, the half of the house was gutted and being, remodeled or whatever. So there's no electricity on over there. There was nothing. And I was just dozing off when I heard door open, door shut. Somebody walk up the stairs right next to, right there. Of course, my eyes popped open, waiting. And then waited, nothing. And then it happened again. Down the stairs, door open, door shut, and then very strong smell of baby powder. It was just the weirdest thing. And all of this happening right there in a house that was being... And so I said something, I woke up the next morning practically on top of her. I was, running on, 40 minutes of sleep.
Well, at least you have everything going on that day.
And I'm I explained, and she's like, oh, that's just Jerry. He comes home every night, takes a shower. It's the same thing. I was, shitting my pants. It was... I was it was bad. So that was my experience. Not many, but profound in my eyes.
Right on.
And then a lot of other things. I had this house, I didn't see anything, but I felt it. But that's for another day.
All right. Well, what about you, Dan? Can you recall some or ones that stick out to you?
Well, beyond the ones I spoke about earlier,
right?
Before, obviously, my filter's a little different. In terms, I've seen 2 full body apparitions, not directly, because most of the time you don't see them directly. Most of the time it's out of the corner of your eye.
The side.
Burlington County Prison, I saw a figure move into one of the prison cells, and after chasing it down, there was nothing there. And then, weirdly enough, at another prison, we were closing up Wayne County Museum. We were closing up an event. And I'm walking with Margot and we're just talking about what we have to still do to finish up. And I stopped because I thought one of the participants was using the phasma box in the cell. And because I saw a person sitting there and I saw a light source. Mm-hmm. And I just turned to say, hey, do you need help with anything? Or you know how to use that? And there was nobody sitting there. Those are the 2 out of the corner of the eye. But it's not those. When that happens, you're more mystified than... I don't find any of it particularly scary, but you're more mystified when that happens. You're trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. You immediately try to problem solve it. Be like, I did not. I couldn't have possibly seen that. The stuff that has been the most startling is the stuff you wouldn't think about. I was laying on the floor trying to play with the kids, basically the spirits of children at Grapevine again, and all of a sudden I jumped I just jumped up because I had felt a dog lick my hand. And I own dogs. I know what that feels like. And It kind of has a unique feeling to it. And, I didn't think a ton of it. I was like, that was really strange. The next day, Tim calls us. The first time we went there, Tracy was sick, so she didn't join us. But they live on site. And she said she was laying in bed, and they had a dog that recently passed away. And she said, if you're here, go scare them. And then about 10 minutes, we timed it up, about 10 minutes after that happened, I had the dog lick my hand. But the stuff that started off as startling doesn't, eventually you get kind of numb to it. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten to a point where I don't react to anything that happens during the investigation. I tend to react to it after. The scariest stuff that's happened to us, we didn't perceive at the time.
Right.
And then you think to yourself, wow, that camera was by my face when that thing told me to get out. That's interesting. You have your moments. I'm more, the stuff that I'm consumed with is just a lot of times just the location itself, safety sometimes. You know, stuff happens. It's creepy a lot. We use radios when we investigate for safety reasons. We have, and you know, we've had it where a kid's voice will come over the radio and say hello, you know, and you're never quite ready for that. Sometimes phobias come into play, as everybody has a phobia. My wife is scared to death of bats. I have one that it's called automatanophobia. I have a fear of mannequins and statues.
Ooh, yeah, that could see that to be
and
creepy.
We've gone into places where we go upstairs and, they do a haunted house here, and there's 100 mannequins sitting there staring back at me. And I realized that during the night my handheld never goes off the mannequins. Like I'm always just on. I don't trust them. It's that stuff that gets me more than, and that's kind of a boring answer, but you know, so many things have happened, but over time they're way less startling and way more interesting. And it's during the review that the stuff actually comes out and actually is something that you go, whoa, that I should have actually was scared of that, but I'm not, because I didn't hear it. Just because there's nothing going on doesn't mean nothing's going on.
Right. Well, then let me ask you real quick, Dan. How do you respond to the skeptics and non-believers in regards to the paranormal?
To each their own.
Okay.
You know, I have as much right to question their belief as they have to question mine. Like, it's to everybody can believe whatever they want. I tend to feel that only if you're a skeptic, that means you have zero fear of the paranormal. Because if you don't believe that any of this is real, then I should be able to send you anywhere, and you're not hesitating at all because it isn't real. I know that seems a little absolute.
It makes sense.
But and the thing is, skepticism by its very definition is kind of evolving. And I was called a skeptic at an event one time because I was talking about how we debunk stuff. She goes, "Oh, I get it. You're a skeptic." I'm like, "I'm a skeptic?"
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
You know, there are people who don't believe it, and there are people who have come with us who don't believe it, and some of them leave going, "Okay, maybe there's something here." Some of them leave. My favorite story of all time of this is my late stepfather. When I turned 40, my gift was that they actually we did Hillview Manor in Pennsylvania, and that's a lot of money, and I don't normally do that because I refuse to pay that much, but because I had family pass away there, they wanted to go. So my stepfather, who was just a very logical person, questioned everything, very skeptical of all of this, but you know what? I don't mind skepticism if it comes with openness. Like in life, you know, there's too much of this in the world now where it's like, well, I believe what I believe and everybody else is wrong. No.
Yeah.
How about I believe what I believe, but, you know, I'll expose myself to this. We've lost that as a society, not just in the paranormal realm, but everywhere. But he was there and asking a million questions, but he was open to going. And the best thing that could have happened, a book slid off a shelf and slammed down to the floor near where they were. And he had seen that book was all the way back on the shelf. He knew that there wasn't a way that... He spent a year trying to figure that out. Of course, it happened just off the camera I had set up, so all I got was the sound of it. But the sound of it, you can hear it sliding across and then crashing down. But there was an example of someone who, fully skeptic, still skeptic, but was like, you know what? I can't explain that. So... You know, again, skepticism is okay as long as... Look, and being a full-on believer is okay as long as you're willing to believe that some of it isn't real.
Right.
And, we meet in the middle. And the problem between skepticism is and I talk about this all the time, is that there is no standard definition of what is paranormal and what isn't. There's no methodology. There's no syllabus. There's 10,000 groups doing it 10,000 ways. And you could sit 20 paranormal investigators where I'm sitting right now. Although it'd be interesting, 20 straight episodes with us. I don't know how you do that. But you could sit 20 people who do what I do, and you would get 20 completely different methodologies. So how can we judge results when we can't even decide on a method? And that's why scientific method doesn't hold up. Paranormal evidence does not hold up to scientific method. There's no control group. There's no standard procedure. Police, when there's an accident, they have a standard procedure that they follow. Every paranormal group does it different. So therefore, we all get different results, and we all look at those results differently. So I don't blame people who are skeptics on this, because everybody does it differently, and everybody thinks their way is correct. I think my way is correct, because it's correct for me and my belief system. I don't disparage any other group the way they do it. I disagree sometimes with other folks' procedures, and they have every right to disagree with what I do. But because there's no standardization, what is a skeptic? We don't even know, because we don't know what we consider to be a haunted, not haunted, paranormal, and not paranormal. What I consider an EVP, somebody on Facebook or YouTube is going to tell me, no, it's a car driving by. It happens every time. And, they don't say, do you think that could be a car? No.
Right.
Yeah, they demand.
We were at Hyde Hall, and there's an EVP we got, and somebody said, no, it's just a car driving by. If you know where that place is, it's in a New York State park that closes at 7 o'clock off a lake. There's not a car within a mile and a half of that place.
Yeah.
But because there's skepticism without openness, it's not like, do you think what this could be something else? No, that's something else. You're stupid. And God bless America, because that's how we are these days. But it's unfortunate. I would love more conversation between the people who believe and don't believe. But everybody kind of they kind of fortress themselves in on their own views. And the believers are just as guilty as the skeptics.
I think you should be skeptic in everything, in every subject.
I'm skeptical. I'm as skeptical as anybody who believes in this. Every location I go to has to prove it to me.
Yeah.
I don't go in. There's a whole chain of thought. I read a book by Benjamin Radford on this, that if you believe in it at all, you shouldn't be allowed to investigate it. Now, I don't agree with that approach, but I kind of see where he's coming from. But the examples he cited about why this contaminates the evidence is because if you believe it's there, then you're going to accept things that shouldn't be accepted as proof to validate your own thoughts.
I see.
And I do see some of that in the field, but you have to not do that. I've thrown out evidence that I think is valid, but I'm like, there's one thing about this that I don't necessarily love, or that the last thing you want to do is put something out that that you're not willing to say, I'm 100% comfortable saying that this is.
Right.
And you also have to be willing to say, look, I don't know what this is, but this ain't normal.
Yeah.
It's like when people tell me, I know what I saw. I hate that line. You think you know what you saw.
I said that like 6 times.
You say you know what you felt. That's different. Only you can know what you felt. When people say, I know what I saw, really, what did you see? I don't know. Like, I've seen 2 full-body apparitions. I think I know what I saw. I have no actual clue.
Right.
We don't have any clue what any of this is. And that's the thing. When people ask me complicated questions, I always and like, do you know why spirits come and go? I'm like, no, but if I did, I'd write a book and retire.
Yeah,
right.
A millionaire.
A long-winded answer to a simple question, but it's a very deep topic, and like everything else in the paranormal field, there's no simple answer to it.
Right. Well, I mean, I feel like you answered that very well, because I mean, I come across a lot of skeptics in regards to what we're talking about right now. So,
and I would consider myself a skeptic, but a believer at the same time. So I guess that puts me in that category of...
Oh, because there's gray areas that matter. Like, there are certain realms of the paranormal world that I'm like, no. And there's certain things that I'm like, yeah. And it's okay. The gray area, it's okay.
Well worded, I agree. I feel like it is okay. But we're gonna be wrapping it up soon here, Dan. But let me ask you, last question for me. What's the driving force that keeps you investigating the paranormal? The results, the knowledge, the adrenaline,
the excitement.
None of the above, all of the above.
It's because every time we get a question answered, it raises 3 more. It is because there are no answers. The impossibility of what we're trying to do is what makes it addictive to do. It's now, for me personally, I enjoy the tech side. I enjoy the filmography of it. I produce and direct all and edit all of our video content, our episodes. I take great pride in trying to make those look as professional as possible. I've always enjoyed that aspect. But what keeps us coming back is just, we've met, every place is unique and every spirit is unique. And they all have a story to tell. And, they're trying to tell it. If something's getting knocked off a shelf in your house, that's not Satan. And it's not a spirit going, get out of the house. Like, people think that because we watch too many movies. A lot of times, these are just spirits trying to get your attention. When you get scratched, sometimes, an investigator, you're going to get scratched. It's not, the mark of the devil. No, it could be just a spirit trying to get your attention, doing it however they can. And as a paranormal investigator, that's what you want. You want to further the narrative. You want to help the living understand what they're sharing space with, because guess what? One of you can go. The other one might not be able to. Or if a spirit is there and needs something to not be there, let's help. The most powerful moment we've had in our adventures was at the Worcester Inn in New York, which has since closed. Jim Bulow, the owner, God rest his soul, passed away. Amazing man. He's why we are still doing this. He was the first person who ever took what we were trying to do seriously. Our first few investigations were complete disasters. Nobody cared. 2 black guys getting pushed down the stairs, no evidence. And we were like, one more. We're going to try this one more time. And he changed everything. And after we did Worcester, everything became what it became. But he owned the building, and he said, there's a friend of mine who passed away here named Dennis. And they found him dead in his room, 217, if I recall. And I think he's still here. And I think he's here because he wants to watch over me. And he goes, if you can talk to Dennis, I'd love to know if he's still here. And the first time we didn't really get much of anything from Dennis. I mean, that place, the joint was jumping, but it just wasn't Dennis. The second time we're sitting in the room, not that he passed away in, but the one that he lived in most of the time. Like, he switched rooms. I think it was 203. I don't know how I remember that. But we're sitting there and we're using the Phasma box, the chopped up soundbar thing. And we said, Dennis, are you here? And, we're asking questions, and we got a confirmation that he said, I am, or some version of that. And we said, do you have a message for Jim? And right after that, it said, I love Jim. And when we played that back for Jim, he teared up. I mean, it was closure for him. He never got to say goodbye to his friend. His friend never got to say goodbye to him.
Right.
And that's afterwards I looked at Emily, I'm like, that's what this is about. It's about allowing people to connect. It's about because a lot of the folks where we go, they don't want to come in and ghost bust. They want to know what's there. They actually a lot of times want to embrace it. And to have that to give somebody closure. That was Jim gave us so much, and that was what we were able to give back to him. And it's the mystery of it, but it's also the ability to affect the living and to give the living some understanding of what it is and how to deal with it and who they're dealing with. A lot of folks we talk to, they just want to know what name to call it. Instead of saying,
how to address it.
How do I talk to you? Tim and Tracy didn't know what Michael's name was in the basement until we got the name Michael. Now, every time they go in there, hey, Michael. Yeah. When I go into a haunted location that I've been to before, I say hello to the spirit of a room we've had every time I walk in the room. Hey, David. I just do that because they're there. I treat them like I would treat the living. And it's that level of respect. And I think that's why we get the results we get, because the spirits, they know we're not just there to take a picture of them. We're there to further the narrative, I tell every spirit when I do my preamble, we are here to tell your story. And a lot of times it's enticing because we say to them, when's the last time you heard your own voice? We can play your own voice back to you. And that's what it is. It's touching something that hasn't been touched before, giving people who, for whatever reason, are still here. And you could do 17 episodes on why spirits are still here, and we'd never get the right answer, because there's a lot of religion, a lot of faith, and a lot of
different
stuff
reasons
to that.
Right.
But that's why you keep coming back, because it keeps bringing you back, because you just want to help. You know, the EVPs are great. The video is great. You know, I'd love to get a picture of a full body apparition and everything, but I don't care about the picture. I care about the spirit and the person that picture was. And that's what keeps coming back, because it's elusive. It's hard to do. It's hard to catch. And you have to keep doing it to get what you're looking to get as an investigator.
Right. So with the incident of your friend and you know, getting that confirmation from the closing firm, did he ever, or do you know, did he ever like still feel that his friend was with him, or did he feel like...
I firmly believe that Dennis stayed there to watch over Jim until Jim passed away. He passed away in December of 2020. And it's funny, they closed the inn after that. And whenever it reopens, I want to go back, because I'll bet you Dennis isn't there anymore. Because I think he did what he was there to do.
And then he moved on.
That's just my opinion on it. I did a whole, I actually did an entire video on Dennis at Worcester, because
on YouTube.
Yeah, on our channels, because it was such a powerful experience for us. And during the COVID shutdown, I had to keep making videos on something, and we were doing investigations. And Jim had always said, "Are you going to put a compilation together of all this stuff in the journey to find him?" And I did, and it was again, it's still the most touching moment we've ever had.
Cool.
Yeah, that was a great story or experience. I mean, like you had touched on, I've never thought of it like that, but being able to bring closure to someone was a beautiful thing, beautiful story. But we're gonna be wrapping it up soon. But Angela, you got anything else?
I think he pretty much cleared it up for me, but like, just out of curiosity, was that the like only not that you helped the spirit move on, but were there any spirits that you were able to help move on, or
really,
other than that?
Really hard to say.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we'll go back to a place, and the spirits that we talk to don't appear to show up that night, but that doesn't mean they're not there.
Right. So just not that you know
Dennis is the only one we've ever gotten any vocal confirmation of like last words, and we don't know if he moved on or not.
Right.
That's the disadvantage of being only technology based and not having a medium. Although we do have locations that bring mediums in. And they'll tell us, you know, we actually will gear our next investigation off of some of the stuff they say. But yeah, I don't have any confirmation that we've actually helped anyone move on. It's not what we do.
Right. You said that.
The only closure we can give is what I just explained, is to the living. We want to help the spirits. We ask what they need, and sometimes they tell us, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they can't.
Those are really good, though.
All right. Well, once again, Dan, thank you so much for agreeing to come on It's All Relative.
Yes, thank you.
We greatly appreciate it. Is there anyone or anything that you'd like to plug or shout out, or anything you got on the upcoming schedule?
Well, we publish absolutely every business and historical investigation we do. We are Orange County NY Paranormal on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We are on Instagram. We have a website, www.orangecountynYparanormal.com. You can find all of our stuff there. We do a lot of events in October. We only have one coming up this weekend in Rochester, Lyons, New York, Rochester area, which I believe is sold out. These events tend to sell out. And that's for charity. Everything we do not charge for anything that we do. So everything goes back to the locations, because it's our way of giving back to locations that give to us.
That's great.
But yeah, check out the website. My brother-in-law does a great job on it, and you can see all our investigations there too. And to anybody out there who's looking to get into this, don't be intimidated by anything that you hear about what we've talked about and everything. And I spent 6 minutes talking about all the gear you need. All you really need to do is have a curiosity for things you're not going to be able to fully understand, and maybe a digital recorder, and
a lot of patience.
And a lot of patience. But you hear me talk about locations. If you want interested in being a paranormal investigator, you can start the way we did. We would rent a haunted room in a haunted hotel, and we would just spend the night in there. You don't have to do it the way we do it. You don't have to drop $6,000 on equipment. You don't have to do that. All you need is curiosity. And these events that are always happening, and seek these out. The iconic locations are great, but find the gems. Find the local ones. They need it more. You know, there are so many businesses and locations and historical societies that are running today because they actually can fundraise off of doing events with people like us and other paranormal groups that do it. So that's my advice. I always like to give that advice to folks. If you're something you're interested in doing, don't let anything stop you from doing it. Just be careful when you do it, and remember, don't go looking for trouble, because you're going to find it.
Right on. You know, one question that we ask all our guests, Dan, is there anyone that you know in your personal life, what have you, that you may recommend to be a possible guest on our show?
We have a friend of ours who's a extremely gifted medium.
That's
almost
nice.
to the point of creepy, and I love her to death. But she's I don't know if she would or not, but she is amazing.
That would
and
be so
we have
awesome.
worked with her before, but the thing is, she's a wonderful medium, but she's an even better person.
Awesome.
And we've referred a lot of cases to her. So
Awesome.
that'd be somebody. I'm not going to. She hasn't agreed to it, so I'm not going to say her name yet.
Right.
But I think that in the past we've sent folks to her, including the filmmaker that you had on your last episode. We actually gave her information as well to interview. I don't know if it happened, but
Awesome.
But that would be who I would recommend, because she can give you a whole other side of this that I can't even begin to understand.
All right. Well, thank you for that recommendation. Angela, what are your social media accounts?
So I am on Instagram at randomange78. And you can also find the show on Instagram at it's _all relative podcast _. It's long. Instagram, it's all relative.
All right.
Leave us a comment.
You guys can always find me at Josh_Toth3. That's my Instagram. And my Facebook is Joshua Toth. Big shout out to Stellar Sound and Media and our editor, Jackson Wallace.
Also, a huge shout out to Timber Design and Build. If you're interested in home renovations, improvements, additions, or clean quality work, you can contact Chris Rawl or Jeff Wigman on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or any other social media platform that you use. Also, don't forget to subscribe and follow It's All Relative on Apple Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, YouTube and YouTube Music, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you're using Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please be sure to comment and leave a 5-star rating. It helps us out. It helps the show out. And it also gives us feedback on what you, our listeners, would like to hear more of.
Yes, thank you to the last person who left the most current review on the Apple Podcast page. Once again, we greatly appreciate those. They help us and the show out. All right, that's a wrap. Dan, thanks again.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, stay safe, stay kind, stay proud and powerful, and we'll see everyone soon. Peace.
Peace.